right. Hey guys, how are you? It's Monday. It doesn't feel like it. It's so weird. I have to always double check and see what day it is because it's just been so weird. Um, there's been a lot of stuff that's been popping up, of course, as usual. That's sort of the thing. If we've got all this time on our hands, might as well look some of these things up. So, yesterday I posted about how all of this is connected to certain camps resupplying the human resources that they lost with the war. So I appreciate everyone sharing that. That was really great. It hit over 200 shares, I think, so far, which is pretty great. It's the truth. I mean, it's not a coincidence that these same voices that were pushing to continue different wars with Iran or Iraq or Syria or Afghanistan or, I mean, you name it, that it was just this constant flow. People couldn't understand why we couldn't just pull out. Well, it was because we were making money off of the drug trade and the human trafficking trade, the sex and child and organ trafficking. There's a documentary on it is on YouTube, but it's a documentary I posted in some of in the comments. I'll post it again at the bottom of this one, and it's talking about how for the last 10 years there's been a huge investigation into the Falun Gong being used as ready-made organ supply for people that wanted to go into China and get an organ transplant. And you can see through the numbers starting in 1999, they only had a few hundred transplants that were documented. At the same time, they the Chinese government started to arrest and jail practitioners of Falun Gong. And then all of a sudden in 2004 and upwards, it has gone through the roof. Where they gain the organs. And the documentary is very interesting in showing that. So, with that in mind, I want to start by shifting the conversation a bit, if you guys don't mind, to really talking today about what they keep saying is the new normal. That this concept keeps coming up. You're hearing it over and over again. The new normal, the new normal. What's that going to look like? What's the new normal? And then there's like pockets of they're testing the waters to see what will happen for consent for the public in all kinds of different ways. The Clinton Foundation started talking about doing contact tracers, and people actually having new jobs now that will be their job because people are so desperate, they're getting squeezed, that there's going to be more and more people that will want to consent to doing that kind of junk. And it's going to be TSA on crack if they let that go on. So let's talk about the new normal. First of all, I want to start off, my friend Tao, who's over in Staten Island, where, we've got a crew of people that keep each other in the know about what's going on. It's been like that for a few years now, which is pretty great. But I just read his post, and I got to share it with you because I think a lot of us are feeling this way. And if we really listen to this, if this is what they're considering the new normal, we really need to be thinking about, bigger and better imaginations for this. So here we go. Tal starts off saying, I'm starting to feel rage. I've been reading about the mental and physical health effects of solitary confinement, the worst punishment you can inflict on a human being. It's literally one of the cruelest forms of torture demented humans have ever dreamt up. And we, to a lesser degree, are inflicting it on our kids. I just read an article in the comments and I'll repost the article that he posted, by the developmental psychologist on how children older than 5 may be permanently socially impaired if the quarantine goes on longer than a couple of months. Quote, as children get older and more socially adept, their peer group becomes a more important hub of their social development than their immediate family, unquote, says Amy Learmoth. Young children are learning the basics of being social beings, and their parents and siblings can provide most of the input they need, while older children and adolescents are learning to navigate complex social groups of peers. In late childhood and adolescence, children start to strike out on their own. Friendships become more complex and more about shared interests. This is where children try out the things that will make their adult friendships work or not. They do this by experimenting. They are in the process of figuring out who they are and what they want from their friends. They are learning to share, to take turns, to resolve conflicts, none of which can be accomplished as effectively through screens. And by way of screens, they're talking about video screens, of course. The quality of connection, the level of intimacy is not the same. The joyous moments brought by subtle interactions and spontaneous responses are lost. My 8.5-year-old daughter went to bed in tears again last night, saying she really missed school and her friends. I'm not a psychologist, but she seemed depressed to me. Numb most of the time, except for 2 episodes of crying the last 2 months. Her anxiety keeps increasing, her pacing back and forth a lot, and she follows me from room to room, not wanting to leave my side. I've told her teacher, quote, who advocates for an 18-month lockdown, and friends' parents about this, but they don't seem to care. She doesn't seem to want to get to know new kids who aren't quarantining, most of them younger, and I don't blame her. She's tired of having attachments torn away and have to start over. Her first 2 best friends are gone likely forever, and now she's lost her second set. I specifically chose her Waldorf school in part because she'd have the same teacher and classmates for 8 years, so she could bond and not have to form new attachments every year. I pushed her in the 1st and 2nd grade to open up and attach. For nothing. For the virus that even by the wildly exaggerated numbers is hardly deadlier than the flu and has killed almost 0 children out of billions. If you're elderly or immune compromised, by all means stay home. Take my tax dollars to support yourself. Just leave my kids the F alone. And that was Sarah Ann, a post from Tao. And you know, a lot of people that are living in lockdown are living in high luxury prison cells. I mean, a lot of people are living, like, especially in New York City, Manhattan. I mean, they don't even have a private yard to go to and play. So these kids are literally in little prison cells. They may look pretty, they may be decorated nice, but they don't have any space. Maybe like 1,000 square feet. They've been in there for months. Is that the new normal? Is that the new normal? So, I have been looking up some things today to talk about what the new normal would be, especially in light of how much has been invested in the Chinese biotech and this huge connection we seem to be having. Is that what they're trying to get us to go into? And if that's the case, we really need to be looking into the culture of how they live and the mentalities that they have, whether it's lack of or promoting humanity, you know? So here's the thing. The big question is the new normal that's proposed actually a cremation of care? And if you haven't ever heard of that concept, the cremation of care, just look it up. There's multiple meanings of that. I'm going to start off on the basic level of discussing the whole concept of cremation of care. Not necessarily as a ritual like some folks might know that to be, but literally cremating, just like that post just talked about, cremating the concept of being able to connect and care truly on a certain level. People now are on their phones all the time. They're if they don't see it, if it's not on their phone, if it's not told on the phone in a certain way, or if they don't see it in their real life, which at this point no one's even living, they're in their homes, they don't believe it. And so the level of compassion or empathy or being able to see somebody for what they're going through, is that getting lost? I wonder about that. Interestingly enough, that's kind of how some of these cultures, the socialist cultures, the thing that I find really interesting about a lot of these socialist countries that we seem to work in tandem with a lot, they're always influencing us to say that they can handle the kids and they can handle the children's minds and bodies and whatnot so much better than the parents. And yet at the same time, I've noticed when you go into their government hospitals or you see how they treat each other, there's a coldness. There's a coldness, especially if you watch some of these documentaries. I mean, I watched a documentary early this morning about these Ukrainian kids that have no families, and they live homeless because they don't have papers. They get thrown off to the side, and no one helps them. It's really interesting. I mean, it's not interesting. It's very sad, but when you're trying to accept other people's cultures, you want to see how it runs on the daily. And if there's a loss of empathy, especially if you're dealing with healthcare and you're asking people to be in charge of your healthcare, if the people that are getting raised up in this culture don't have a humanitarian perspective, we're all going to become experiments. And I have to wonder if that's what the new normal they keep talking about. It's like lockdown forever. Start becoming a spy basically on your neighbors. If your neighbor just wants to go outside, always wear a mask all the time, which quite frankly is very dangerous to wear all the time. If anything, I think sometimes people need to be wearing the mask in their home if their home is not cleaned properly, and going outside and getting the fresh air. But it seems to be going backwards. There were a couple people that were running the other day with the masks on, like heavy duty masks. And I was terrified for them. The way that your body oxidizes and kills all kinds of respiratory issues or whatnot is to breathe in fresh air, and then you breathe out the CO2, which is all that basically a aerial toxin, in the sense that it clears. That's what clears your body. But if you're like this, you're breathing it in over and over and over again. Like that, I mean, it's like, especially if you're running, I mean, that's like heavy duty breathing. That's not good. So some things that I learned today, I think that it's interesting that a lot of these tests that are coming up to test COVID are coming out of Germany or coming out of LabCorp. But it seems like there's a definite link between the testing, who's making the manufacturers that are making this testing, and who you send off the testing to are also ones that are involved in genome. They want to hold on to everyone's DNA, and they also do youth rejuvenation. They're also involved in organ donation or trafficking. That's a dangerous thing to start mixing all three of those things on a global scale. Like having specific companies that are saying that they're dealing with vaccination, global health, organ transplants, youth rejuvenation, biotech, which deals with young blood, and those kind of things. They're also having patents on adrenochrome. If all of those companies, Quest Diagnostics is involved, LabCorp holds on to all of those, and all of those, that's where you test, they send off the test to. They're storing all that information. Now, if we're following suit culturally, the practices and the ways of perceiving healthcare as the Chinese government right now currently is doing, well, that's what they were doing to the Falun Gong starting 20 years ago, like right around 2001, almost 20 years ago, where they take their blood, they would know their DNA, they would have it listed in a database, and when someone needed it, well, then that person got harvested alive. It's a fact. It's not a fact. You're not going to read it on the evening news. But it's there if you want to look through the documentation. It's pretty sad. Now, if you think about what they're asking us to do with COVID right now, all that test does is basically take in your DNA, test you for certain proteins, and get your blood type. That's all it does. We all have bacteria, yeast, fungus, mold, parasites in our systems. I have to wonder if the good guys are using COVID as a way of not creating a crazy war because certain people are going down that are really big, that were involved in huge crimes against humanity. Someone's got to be in charge with all this human trafficking and the drug trafficking and the organ trafficking and the sex trafficking through the war. There's a lot of people on high levels that have known and profited on very, it's just bad. And I think that some of them are coming to terms with it. They're going to get arrested. And COVID's a perfect cover. Like the Queen's going into quarantine right now, and she's going to be in quarantine for how no one knows how long, and she's cleared her book, she's cleared her schedule. It's the Queen. She's arrested. Common sense. Common sense. That otherwise that makes no sense. Did she do that for HIV/AIDS when the AIDS pandemic came through? No. So there's a lot of people that are in quarantine. Oh, Fosse's in quarantine. That's kind of fun. Wonder why. So there's that, but there's also the other side that's trying so desperately to hold on to their positions and their powers, and and still hoping that the people are listening to them underneath them. So using COVID as a way to keep pushing through to, well, first of all, resupply. You know, you need to have human resources for all of the stuff, and now that the wars are shut down, they're going to have to find more creative ways on figuring out how to get new human resources, right? And do it more of a legal way. And calling it health is fantastic, global health. So, just keep an eye out for that. If people, like I said 2 days ago, if all of a sudden there's certain leaders that are telling you that it's best for you to have your children go away from you, or that you need to leave the home because of COVID, please don't. Please do not do that. That is very dangerous. So, anyway, let's see what we've got here. I looked up a lot of different things with Bill Gates and the smart tattoos and the Microsoft patents. Contact tracing dye is what they call it. Contact tracing dye. Right now, Pitt University is working on patches. They call it patches, but it's a tattoo. I mean, that goes right on your skin. And apparently that's going to be the vaccine, at least one of the versions of vaccines. They're working on that. Also, the people that are pushing off the testing in Germany, check out the federal minister of health. His name is Jens Spahn. He's a young guy in his 30s, and he's been pushing for legislation to have all of the German citizens become organ donors. Of course, right now it's all voluntary, but I find that really interesting that that's what's happening. Also, right before they put in what did they put in? There's so much information, guys. The Gates Foundation opened up a Berlin office. Here we go. About a year before this came out, and now there was an article in February 19th of 2019 saying the Federal Minister of Health, Jens Spahn, a strong German network for global health, starting the signal for the global health hub in Germany. Together with 200 partners from the health organizations, foundations, and non-governmental organizations, science and academia, and the healthcare industry, the Federal Minister of Health, Jens Spahn, has launched the creation of a network to combat disease and advance prevention projects worldwide, with Germany as its base. At the kickoff event on Tuesday in Berlin, Spahn suggested that the Global Health Hub Germany initially address tropical diseases, cancer, and digitalization. Quote, with the creation of the Global Health Hub, Germany assumes its responsibility for improving health care worldwide. In this network, we will join our forces to move forward in our fight against tropical diseases, cancer, and antibiotic resistance. We also intend to advance the digitalization of healthcare provision internationally. Germany must leverage its strength and competence to provide effective assistance. Quality health care does not stop at national borders. The rest of it I'll just copy this so that you guys can read the whole article. But the thing is it's almost good that all the schools have gotten shut down and you get to kind of reset and figure out what these kids are actually learning. What are they actually learning? And already there's been a huge shift in the way that people can relate to each other anyway. I don't know if you've experienced it as an adult, but being a single person in the 21st century, and how even adults who used to know how to be able to be more human, they'd want to call each other more. If you're dating, you actually want to go on a date. You don't just FaceTime them 3 times a day and go, cool, we're together. There's certain things that, like the narcissism that's going on. If things aren't working out for me all the time, then I can just swipe left and get somebody else. There's no time to compromise and really deal with each other and work through problems. It's just like next, 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 next. And those are people that remember what it was like to be a little bit more normal, a little bit more human. And we've now gotten in that situation. And you think about the kids now that, I walked by a baby who was 6 months old in a carrier holding the phone, like this, and just wanting to just, oh, it's all the phone. Everything, the whole reality is this phone, and not knowing how to really engage with other people. And then we want to have a whole future of kids that grow up in schools with that kind of mentality, with this cremation of care in understanding how to be empathetic to other people and seeing each other's boundaries. It's literally narcissism. Whatever works for me is what matters, and whatever's going to get me a job in doing something that's going to self-sustain me in this environment is what I'm going to do. And I have to wonder if that's how a lot of these doctors in the Chinese culture are able to go through with these kind of live organ extractions from people that they know this is so wrong. The human brain is a very interesting thing. It can justify anything, especially if it's in survival mode. Like all of a sudden it just switches. Like you can switch your consent so quickly if the circumstances just seem just about right. You wouldn't believe what you can justify. And again, with the cremation of care and kids isolating and not growing up, not knowing how to really relate and negotiate terms and understand boundaries and work together, in good, this is a dangerous thing, on top of the fact that if they go through with what the plans are to have a smart tattoo or have contact tracing dye or whatnot to show proof of a vaccine, there are mental issues that happen with a lot of these different vaccines that literally shut off the emotion of kids. Heavy metals literally shut off the emotions on certain kids. And they act more like a computer than they act like a human. Like they can't see the pain in another person. And if all of us get this tattoo, and what if more and more people end up acting more like a computer rather than being able to empathize other people's pain? And then we have an entire culture of global health that acts like that. It's going to be like, what was that movie? Galactica, I think, something like that, like on crack. Yeah. So one thing I found was really interesting. Did you know Bill Gates' dad was a lawyer? For it, and he I don't know if he still is a lawyer, but he was a lawyer for K&L Gates. They were lawyers for manufacturing, biotech, and everything between China, Taiwan, and the U.S. I found that very interesting because that was right around the same time in the 90s. It was right around the same time in the 90s when the Clintons opened up China and the manufacturing and resources to the US, and a lot of the jobs and manufacturing and all that went over there. So I thought that was kind of interesting. You might want to check that out. And one of his talks, Bill kept saying the ultimate solution for all of this are vaccines. Does that ring a bell to any of you guys? The ultimate solution? I mean, that is so Hitler. The ultimate solution is only the vaccine. It's just like, this is crazy. I can't believe people are even accepting this. It's funny because I've got some friends that are like super hipster artists, and they're like hiding in their caves and just painting and wanting to feel good. And I had someone message me a couple nights ago, and they said, for humanity's sake, you have to stay silent and go along with the program. You're going to, all these conspiracy theories and all these things that people are putting around the internet that are they're causing the problem, and they're going to cause all these issues, and you just got to stay home and be quiet and go along with what they're telling you to do. First of all, if you know me, that's impossible for me to do. I'm always searching out the truth. Ever since I was a little kid, that's how I've always been. And I never let anyone tell me what it is. I look it up for myself. That's always just how I've been. And secondly, talk about cowardice. Like, I'm shocked with how much cowardice there is. And, even with the people that I know better, there's so many people in raw health and the ones that are involved in all these amazing natural remedies things. I'm not hearing from any of them posting stuff lately. They're afraid. That's terrible. They know better. And then I'm friends with these guys that, man, they remind me of my dad, and like they're like, we're not taking this. Nope. And I'm like, there's the men. There are the men. There they are. I'd love to see more of them. To get some balls. I mean, it's just crazy. It's just crazy. So, yeah, cremation of care, guys. I mean, we're listening to people that are telling us, oh, I thought this was interesting too. So, I was looking, all the different protocols that they talk about doing for COVID. Stay indoors, always wear your mask, washing your hands constantly. And then, and like I said a couple weeks ago, they're going to start finding new problems with COVID. Of course they are. Because they need to find more reasons to say it's a COVID death to up the numbers to make it seem like it's still legit. Because, guys, so I found this really interesting. I went back to the American Cancer Society's webpage, and it's literally verbatim what they're telling people to do to avoid cancer is exactly what gives you the cancer. They're telling you, stay inside. The sun is dangerous. The sun is dangerous. What did we just learn from the UV rays? That it literally cleans out your system. And I've been doing that sunlight coconut oil thing for a long time. I'm good. Look it up. Check this out. It's just cancer.org. And, they talk about gene mutations in their lifetime. Well, the way that you get a gene mutation is an outside toxin. But what they're saying is the outside toxin is exposure to sunlight. So they tell you, avoid the sun as much as possible. Put on your toxic sunscreen that has a ton more chemicals on it than you can imagine. Titanium oxide is what's in a lot of these. Yeah, a lot of the beauty, we're just going to talk because, I mean, whatever. Let's just go with it. So like this thing, titanium dioxide sunscreen. If you look up titanium dioxide, it is not good for you. And that's in that, I mean, if you think about it, so you're going out in the sun, you put all that stuff on, and then on a daily, you're putting on more of it every single day. that is going in your skin always, and at the same time, it's not allowing the UV rays to go into your skin and clean out the yeast, fungus, mold, parasites that lay inside underneath the second layer of your skin. And the only reason that you burn is because you're killing off those things under there, and there's no protection for your skin to heal if you don't know how to actually lotion it up. And guess what happens? You burn. But if you put coconut oil on your skin, and then you have a really good, I like to blend it with coconut oil, and then I think I've shown you guys this one before too. The Alpenglow. Let me see if you guys can see that. This is a really great product out of Alaska, completely organic, and it's just very thick, great shea butter, okay? That way your skin is healed from all of that stuff while the UV is actually going in and cleaning up what's underneath your skin that's fed by bad food and all kinds of toxins that you put in your system. So there's that. They don't talk about this kind of stuff on the American Cancer Society page whatsoever. As a matter of fact, here, let's go back to this one, the BRCA1 gene. So a few years ago, when Angelina Jolie was being the big wig sponsor of, getting your breasts removed and all this other stuff, what they were saying is like, oh, if you get the BRCA1 gene, then you're precancerous. But they forgot to tell you that actually BRCA1, when it's working properly, it's constantly rejuvenating your DNA cells. So actually, when the BRCA1 gene is working properly in your body, your DNA cells are constantly rejuvenating, and you're rejuvenating health. They forgot to leave that one out. They forgot to mention that part. The only time it turns toxic is if you have an outside toxin that goes in and mutates it, and then you end up getting the cancer cells. They told all these folks to get rid of the BRCA1 gene, but then interestingly enough, that same gene is used in anti-aging youth serums. So if you want a past example on the medical industry not necessarily being fully transparent in full disclosure on a pandemic like a cancer, and then steering the public in a certain way to make them fearful, to think that they've got to physically remove something out of their body or physically put something in their body, but it actually benefits another aspect of the industry. That's a really good one. Check it out. And that's why we need to be very careful on following through with transparency, finding out what the real deal is, finding out what's the real story, and who's really behind pushing these narratives. That's why I keep posting. Like, every time I keep seeing like that whole social media factchecker.org, go research a little bit of who's running it. Annenberg Foundation. Annenberg is the social communications school at University of Pennsylvania. They literally show their degree is how to manipulate the public through communication. That's literally the degree. And if you look back into the Annenberg family, that's an interesting pot of gold right there. But right next door is the Perelman School of Medicine. And both schools are funded by the Gates Foundation. And the Perelman School of Medicine, right next door to the Annenberg Foundation, which is where factchecker.org is working out of, they're starting to experiment on student volunteers on these vaccines. So when factchecker.org says that Judy Milovitz is a liar and she's not true, and they're just doing everything they can to slander her, well, it seems to be in their best interest to do that. So there's that. Some people have private messaged me and asked me, where do you get your information? How do you know what you're, how do you go about researching the way that you're researching to find these different things? Well, I do have some really great connections of other researchers that are constantly sending me information. I've been doing this a long time myself. What I like to do is go into the actual reports. I'll go into following names, following organizations, finding out who's on the board, just following the trip. Someone posted that they believe what 60 Minutes said the other day. Well, when you look at who owns the news network, she's highly vested in a German. Where is it? She's highly vested in a German biotech lab that again is funded by the Gates. I mean, it's just how did the Gates have such a huge? I mean, like it's like their tentacles are like everywhere. It's really mind-boggling that one person or one foundation has such immense tentacles in so many different ways, and at the same time everyone's trying to act like he's Papa Santa or something like that, and at the same time you've been hearing people get so upset about the whole concept of patriarchy or the big bad white man who's trying to like take over the world. That dude's it, man. But everyone seems to want to go along with it. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. But we're the conspiracy theorists. Just check out, and I like to go into different reports. Like I'll go into the NIH, find out different reports of what they're talking about, and listen from the horse's mouth. I remember when I was a kid, I had a friend who refused to read the Bible. Like I was kind of a weird little kid where I actually liked to read the Bible. I wanted to know for myself. Because everyone, will tell you, oh, well, this is what it says in the Bible. This is what it says in this book, or this is what it says in that book. I want to read it myself and find out what it really says. And then when my friend had questions about the Bible, I'd be like, well, just go read it. And she's like, oh, no, I don't feel like reading it. Can you just tell me, please? Just give me the Cliff Notes. Just tell me what you think it means. And then it'll be so much easier. I really don't feel like reading it. We have an entire population of people that refuse to go and find out for themselves what the truth is when literally it's a life or death situation here. And they go, oh, Rachel Maddow, will you please just tell me what they're telling me? Because I don't really want to listen to these things anyway. I don't want to look at these articles. I don't want to find out. Just tell me, please. And then they have, what I found is interesting is that in the last 20 years, there's been a huge shift in actual journalism, like people being allowed to do their job as being an independent investigative journalist that would do basically what, some of us are doing, and just being a citizen saying, hey, this is what I found out. Let me share it with you. You guys decide for yourself what you think of it. And here's some links if you want to check it out yourself. That's investigative journalism, but we're doing it for free. Now what was weird, they have kids that came up internationally, like a lot of these celebrities like Trevor Noah or Stephen Colbert. They were like kids that grew up kind of traveling all over the world, or like having their military parents like all over the place. So they never really had a stable home environment, which is reflective of what we talked about in the beginning with these kids like not really being able to really connect. Kind of gives you a sociopathic kind of perspective of the world, and don't really know how to connect with people, but you're really good at being they and you're really good at being influential and making people think that you're someone that can be trusted. And they know how to do all kinds of different accents. That's another thing that's really creepy. Because if you know how to do different accents, it psychologically messes with people to either think that they can identify with you, or there's more power in what you're saying, depending on how you're saying it with your accent. And I was watching this video with Trevor Noah interviewing Bill Gates. And like, if you really listen to Bill Gates when he's talking, he doesn't really say anything. It's really weird. And he just keeps going, vaccine, vaccine, vaccine. That's the only thing that's going to beat it. And he's smiling about it, and he's all excited about it. And you got a guy like Trevor Noah who perceives himself to be this like guy that's totally, he starts talking in British, like a British accent with Bill Gates. And it immediately, I was like, wait a second. I have never heard him on regular air talk in a British accent. Why is he doing that? It was really weird. A lot of times, and then you know how Madonna would start doing that? Even Gwyneth Paltrow, I think, a couple times tried playing that card. It's almost like there's this power thing, like people are going to trust a British accent more when really they're not saying anything. But as long as you say it with a British accent, people are going to trust it and think that it's smart, it sounds smart. Because he did it halfway through the interview when Gates was just spiraling into like talking about nothing. And it's like he immediately went into, oh, we need to make this sound so much better than what he's actually saying. So let's just talk in a British accent so it sounds smarter, even though he's not saying anything. You guys think I'm gonna post the video again in the comments. I'd love to know what you think of it too. It was so weird, so weird. But this happens. This happens, and we've got a lot of sociopaths or sociopathic tendencies in a lot of these different leaders and a lot of the different influential cultural voices that we listen to. Is that going to be the new normal? Is it already the new normal? But let's go back to contact tracers, because they're talking about that becoming the new normal, and that really, really bothers me. People, the people that are afraid of folks like myself that want to honestly find out what's going on and be open to whatever and just allow our brains to work like they're supposed to and critically think. We've been called Nazis, alt-right, all kinds of terrible names that aren't true, and we don't call ourselves that. I sure as heck don't. I mean, I'm an artist. I mean, like, I'm supposed to be like one of the most liberal people there are out there, and I've done a lot of different things, So, that's not me describing myself like that. It's the people that are involved in this stuff calling us that. It's called projection. It's a classic tool. And the same people that have been calling people that are calling them out for what they're doing are the ones that are actually following protocol of how the Nazi regime would work. Point in fact, contact tracers. You've got the Clinton administration. By the way, Hillary Clinton was the one that coined the term alt-right. No one created alt-right except Hillary Clinton. That word and that name and that description for her people that opposed her. Okay? So there was no neo-Nazi crazy people that were alt-right trying to destroy America. That's Hillary Clinton making up a wonderful narrative to cover up the fact that now the Clinton Foundation wants to have in our society contact tracers. Contact tracers are just like the Gestapo. They are just like Nazi Germany, where they're paid. First of all, you squeeze the culture. Okay, they've squeezed us for a few months now, and there are people right now that are willing to do anything for $1 at this point because they are desperate. So desperate times calls for desperate measures and doing desperate things that are not necessarily healthy for our society. One of which is being paid to be a snitch on your neighbor. And literally allowing people to go into your home, separate people in the family from a test, and you're going to call that a job. And you're not going to say that that's not Nazi mentality. That's terrifying. So there's that. Let's not make that happen as a new normal, please. That would be really, really bad. That'd be really, really bad. That would cause a lot of issues. Cremation of care. Cremation of care. Cremation of caring of what actually works for your body. Cremation of care on how kids can interact and learn how to grow and share and socialize. Cremation of care and being able to be a real neighbor and not shutting people out because you think they might have COVID. I mean, can you imagine someone going down the street and you think that they have COVID, or they do you know how scared they're going to be? It's like we're going back to the scare pandemic of the HIV, and the people that had to deal with that. You know, they got HIV positive, and everybody isolated them. They shut them out of their homes. They shut them out of everything. It was just horrible. And everyone who's lived through that in the 80s, 90s, please speak up. Please remember that. Please make sure that we're not going to go back to that kind of thing. Just share your stories, and some of your friends and family members that went through that, and they were isolated. They were thrown out of homes. They had nowhere to go. It was terrifying, all because of the stigma of having the HIV. But ironically, you know, look at who was playing around with God and science back then too. Fauci, Gates, all those guys, you know. And that's one of the reasons I thought was very interesting what Judy was talking about with her own research. So cremation of care, we can't let care get cremated. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us human. And I feel like there's a precipice right now where we can go one of two ways: in falling for the fear and creating a horrible future where all of those negative things, they're calling it safety, but guys, know your history. People that say the ultimate solution, people that are asking for contact tracers, people that are telling you that it's okay, that you need to stay at home for a year and a half, people that are telling you that fresh air is dangerous, people that want to put a mask on you. This is what I want to talk about. Ooh, girl, I forgot. Okay, so much. The masks. Do you know that they made slaves wear masks like that all the time? Number one, it was to lower their oxygen level so that they weren't as strong to be able to run away. Think about that. And they wouldn't be able to speak, so they couldn't connect with each other. Because if you think about it, there were only a few slave owners, okay? And you've got all these people that are working every day together, coming up with ideas, talking, you know, becoming friends, becoming lovers, having children, or until the children get taken away. But the biggest psychological focus for slave owners to make sure that they kept their power was to always break ties. Any kind of tie that would bring people together out of love and friendship and care and do the right thing. They never wanted that. So wearing face masks, you can't talk. I mean, they made some of them like you couldn't even talk. Taking the kids, you know, and you can't read people's facial expressions. So it kind of like desensitizes people over a long period of time to really even want to look at people's physical reactions and understanding how to read somebody's face in emotion and communication. You know, that's another thing too. If you have a face mask and you're in a dangerous situation, or you're in a situation where you might not be able to truly talk the way that you could freely, you can use eye contact. You can, you know, I mean, you can do that. But if you've got a face mask, you have no communication. I thought that was really interesting. Are they at the same time? And if you want to consider that conspiracy, look at how they are trying so hard to control the narrative on social media on what people are allowed to talk about and what people aren't allowed to talk about. And then we're physically supposed to stay in our homes, so we're not even able to discuss in person with people all these different ideas because everyone's at home. And then if you go out in public, you have to wear your face mask. And people aren't really excited about talking to strangers these days as much as they used to be. They'll still talk to me. I'm a big talker. But, you know, these are things to think about. This is critical thinking, guys. This is taking your head out of the television, what those folks tell you, and really looking around with your own two eyes and seeing these different things. And I'm not saying look at it exactly the way I do, but these are solid questions. These are solid things. And I tell you, these people have put a lot of money into this future. A lot of money. I don't think they want to lose. So let's just keep it up. Let's not have a cremation of care. Let's care about each other. And those that want to sit there and tell you to be silent and don't ask questions, block them. They can make their own reality. I'm done. Block them. It's just it's a waste of time to debate people that just want to debate for debate's sake, and they do no research and they don't try and they just want to justify their cowardice. Don't waste your time. Take time to research, check it out, share interesting ideas, keep yourself safe, but also don't be afraid. All right, I'm done. I hope you guys have a really great night. Bye. See you next time.